Hi, I'm Mike Perella, the Chief Strategy Officer for eShare. I'm about to give you an overview of our product and go into some of the benefits that eShare has for sharing within a Microsoft environment. So typically, one of the questions people ask us when we come across people with a need to share externally is, hey, how is eShare any different from sharing directly out of my Microsoft 365 tenant? And there are some very subtle yet very important differences that we have with regard to sharing, and I'll go through them one by one. The first difference with external sharing with eShare is that we have a greatly improved user experience. We have policies and controls that are simply guardrails for end users, which means they don't have to have a high cognitive load when it comes to understanding what kind of data they're sharing and who they're sharing it with and what the appropriate policies are. In addition to that, eShare has a secure mail functionality to it, which allows us to solve basically the muscle memory problem that happens in organizations. By far and away, the number one collaborative tool that people like to use is email. But when they use email, typically governance and controls break down. We have the ability to enable email in a world of modern collaboration and link-based sharing. It's quite simple to share right out of Microsoft Teams with eShare. You can see I'm in the eShare plugin directly in Microsoft Teams. I now want to share with my partner on this Project Mars Landing folder. So it's super simple. I just click on the three dots and click on Trusted Sharing, which brings up the interface to enter recipients and a quick message. So I'm going to attempt to share with Brian, who's a partner of mine, as well as I'm accidentally sharing with someone at Gmail. You'll see that eShare immediately evaluated the policies and determined that this particular folder, based upon the sharing policy, is not going to allow a public consumer domain email. So in order to share this, I have to remove it. So I'll click on that and remove it. Policy was automatically selected based upon the sensitivity of the files that are in the container. In this particular case, I'm able to change what can be done inside the share, whether or not download and upload and edit, and those things are enabled for the end user. Your policy can drive and your administrators can drive whether or not your end users have the ability to tweak and tune the policies, but in this case, we allow it. Otherwise, you can completely lock down what options are available. As simple as that, I've created a share and shared it with Brian, and you can see in my shares, I've got a Project Mars Landing share with a single recipient in it. And if I needed to, I can add or remove recipients. So I can add others into the mix. Now I'm going to send a link to John at Aerospace Rocks to also collaborate on this same folder. So now I've got two recipients in this particular share, and they can work on it together. Next up is sharing out of SharePoint. It's a very similar process to sharing out of Teams. Again, we're in a folder. You can see the sensitivity labels here. You can see also some documents that don't have sensitivity labels. Those documents will inherit the sensitivity label of the container or the folder that they're in SharePoint. So in this particular case, I'm going to take something that's labeled as highly confidential, and I can create a trusted share around that singular file. Similar interface, a known partner, select the Gmail. In this particular case, again, not allowed, invalid email, so I'll have to remove that. Again, you can see the policy here was selected as highly confidential, which is different policy than what was selected before, and it will create the trusted share integration and the ease of sharing data directly from Microsoft Outlook. So in this particular case, I'm going to share with Brian again, and I'm going to show you a slightly different experience for sharing with a public email, the Gmail. We're going to select some information in here, a few different documents that we're going to attach files as you normally would, and the outbox for the sent items for this user simply shows that they've attached a document as normal. What the sender gets notified is that there was an email sent. It was converted to a trusted share. The email attachments were grabbed and put directly back into the sender's OneDrive, so the information never left their environment. But you'll notice that we evaluated the policy against two different kinds of recipients. So it was sent to these two different recipients, but they have different policy governance with regard to what they can do with the file. So the Gmail was not permitted to see or access the information. However, my policy in my organization allows for me to give temporary access to people that I deem as a, let's say, a dynamic partner. I happen to know that this person is authorized to be able to access this information and needs it for a temporary period of time. So I can click manage, and what you'll see here is I have the ability to override and provide them temporary access to that document with a simple click. So simple, easy user interface. Now this end user has been provided access for 48 hours, and then their access will expire out while the other recipients will have consistent access to the data. Another advantage of using eShare in an external collaboration environment is the lack of having to manage identities inside the tenant. You can conduct business in real time, meaning that you can have a transient or an ad hoc kind of sharing environment, or a very rapid deployment where you need to share information externally to your organization, but you don't have time to interface with IT to get that done on a peer-to-peer network capability. Another thing that we have as a significant advantage is bring your own identity. So instead of, again, having to manage guest access or manage multiple identities inside your environment and perhaps getting blocking messages like you see on the screen here, different kinds of messages that block different kinds of external users, we validate the identity of the user against their own home organization, which reduces the friction in a sharing environment. Another significant advantage that we have with eShare is that we carry forward the branding and the domain of the sharing organization. So external recipients, when they receive shared documents or shared files, they stay in a consistently branded environment, so they know they're getting it from the sharing organization, as well as the fact that the sharing organization gets to carry forward their brand, particularly when you're dealing with external clients, partners, or supply chain. That trust and legitimacy is carried through the entire sharing process. Additionally, as you can see here on the screen, when we share out of eShare, we use the domain of the sharing organization. So there's never any access blockage from security organizations for potentially public sharing domains, which quite often security organizations block. So instead of at sharepoint.com, it's at aerospacerocks.com in this particular example, which greatly increases the ability for sharing to be effective and not get blocked. Now let's take a look at the recipient experience when using eShare. Earlier in the demonstration, I showed a share with Brian from eShare, one of my known partners. This is his experience. He received an email fully branded from Aerospace Rocks, letting him know that there's a trusted share to be accessed. We have full capabilities of controlling the colors, the shape, the size, and the logo that the recipient receives. So when he clicks on the link, instead of you having to maintain an endless number of identities in the eShare environment or the Teams environment, eShare actually authenticates against the organization of the recipient. So you'll see it was very seamless for him. We authenticated against eShare, not against Aerospace Rocks, and Brian has been allowed into the trusted share. Now, the trusted share layout's very easy to use. On the left-hand side, you've got the access to the files and folders. On the right-hand side, you've got collaborative chat. You actually have the ability to control the size of the chat to the point where you can make it larger or smaller, and you can even hide it to get completely into the documents. Now he's got access to his documents. He's got full edit capabilities and co-authoring capabilities based upon the policies that are involved. You can have view only or you can have edit capabilities. Now he's got full Microsoft Online editing capabilities right within the Aerospace Rocks trusted share. And there's co-authoring enabled so that when other members get into the same exact document, you can see that multiple users. Let's take a look at co-authoring and co-editing. I'm in my teams. I'm the internal collaborator, and I'm going to go to my Project Mars landing folder, which I have shared externally with my partner, Brian at eShare. If I go into the flight data folder file and start editing, I will see that Brian's already in there typing away, collaborating on the same document that I've got internally, yet he's an external person who's been authenticated against his own organization. So we can co-author, co-edit as we'd like with full functionality, with full Microsoft functionality, and the ability to edit at our heart's content. One of the other major advantages of sharing externally through eShare is the robust policy options that we have. When you establish a B2B network with your partners using native teams, unless you have an environment where you can fully trust everybody in the organization, it can be problematic because an open Teams channel between two organizations is wide open and the data can flow either way. So if anybody flows sensitive data into that channel, then it can be exposed inadvertently. eShare avoids that by having control all the way down to the file level. So regardless of who's in a share, we will evaluate on a file by file level the sensitivity of that file and who should have access and what type of access they should have. This also helps improve situations where you either have a wide open tenant or a closed tenant. In a wide open tenant environment, you have full shareability, but you have no real control or visibility, leading to a lack of governance and a lack of ability to be compliant in many situations. With a closed tenant, which many customers use to overcome that challenge, it really becomes difficult to share externally, and certainly difficult to share in an ad hoc transient environment when you need to do business dynamically and compete in a modern world. Another huge advantage of using eShare is our analytics and visibility. We have a full module that sits right inside Synapse and Power BI that gives you visibility and the ability to drill down into what's going on with your unstructured data as it moves around in your organization and as it's shared with external parties. So you can determine who's accessed what data, at what times, from what countries, on what kinds of devices, and what actions they're taking with it. And you can ensure that your data is being used in a compliant manner and that there are no risky behaviors going on. The eShare Analytics module allows you to take that information and those dashboards and put them in your own private BI, Power BI instance, which allows you to attach it to other data sources in your environment and get even richer information about the flow of your data. Many of our customers use our dashboards natively in their environments, and some augment them with their own information. Now let's understand the visibility and analytics that come with the eShare installation. eShare has very robust audit logs that we pull about every activity for every user in every share. And we port that information into Power BI and Synapse, giving you full navigability into your information. At the collaboration overview page, you can see how many collaborators are creating how many shares and what are the total number of file operations that occur. And this is a very important one here, the modern collaboration usage. We've noticed that across the entirety of our client base, modern collaboration, meaning users are interacting with, viewing, editing, co-authoring files without actually downloading them, is at or around 92% all the time across our environments, meaning that you do not have file replication occurring when you enable people to collaborate powerfully within their environment. You can also drill down into the file activity, understanding the usage of your unstructured data internally and externally, across domains, across users, across actions and what kinds of actions are people taking with your files, down to the sensitivity labels. And all of these things are filterable either with a simple click or through traditional filters. So if I click on confidential data, you'll see that my entire dashboard converts to showing me what the activity was with my confidential data, right down to the individual file, the individual SharePoint site that it was accessed from, including where in the world it was accessed, what IP address, and so forth and so on. So you've got tremendous depth of visibility into what's going on at a moment's notice with just a few simple clicks. Again, this is Power BI and Synapse so that you can port this over to your own environment and be able to connect this to other data sources you may have in your environment. In summary, using eShare on top of your Microsoft 365 investment leaves you in a much better situation. You've got an improved user experience. You no longer have to manage a million identities coming and going as you have different partnerships and different supply chain and different clientele. Your branding is carried through the entire experience for the users of the system. In fact, they don't even know they're using eShare. We have very, very robust and granular policy options, which allow you the kinds of control that you need to be secure and compliant in a modern link sharing world. And then finally, we have the analytics and visibility so that you understand what's going on in your environment with your data, which helps you have peace of mind at your fingertips. Thanks very much for joining me today on the demonstration. We're happy to go into more detail with anybody to learn more about the eShare process, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.